Hi, friends, and welcome back to Afters. This month, March 2024, I have artist and DJ Phlegm from New Orleans joining me. Phlegm first got on my radar last summer at Honcho. It was Friday, and I usually spend the day at the creek just chilling on floaties. But I volunteered to go grab some drinks for my friends and I at our camp, which was actually directly behind the stage that Phlegm was playing at Hemlock Hole. But I never made it to the camp, and I never made it back to my friends with drinks because I was just enchanted by this set. It was an amazing daytime set that Phlegm played, and I stayed till the very end, and I'm so glad that I got to experience that. Phlegm will be returning to New York City in April to play Nowadays Nonstop on 420 with an amazing lineup, so you won't want to miss it. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce you to Phlegm. Hi, Phlegm.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty well.
Cute.
Welcome to New York.
Thank you. It's cold and it's snowing, but it's all good.
Yeah, you got in right before the snow, thankfully.
Kind of. Because it started while I was asleep. And so I went to sleep and then woke up and I was like, oh, it's just giving Winter Wonderland. What is this? I used to go on the internet as Uncle Jemima a long time ago when I was like 19 or 20. And then I felt like that name was like not funny and inappropriate and too childish. So then I was homophiliac for a while. And then around 24, I was like, okay, it's time for me to take my art practice and my like club life seriously. And then phlegm was what my 24-year-old brain interpreted as like adult and mature. It doesn't have a meaning, or at least it doesn't have this like long drawn out artistic conceptual meaning. I like the way that the letters look when they are written in lowercase. The way the P kind of drops and then the H and the L and the hook of the G. I like the way that it looks, but other than that, I just wanted something that was like one word. So when the girls call phlegm, who else could it be?
Yeah, I noticed the lowercase stylization.
Yeah.
Something about it, it does like, it's
It's
nice
cute.
on the eye. Yeah.
And then at this point now, people refer to me as phlegm like all the time, to where it has lost its meaning as like what its original meaning was, which is sort of like mucus and stuff. I hear that like at this point now, I will like turn my head when someone calls my name in public, which is funny for me.
I know you're from New Orleans, but I'm not sure if our listeners do. Can you tell me about where you grew up and that whole experience for you?
I am a New Orleans girl, born and raised, birth to earth, womb to tomb. My parents are from New Orleans. On my mom's side, her dad's family's from New Orleans. Work.
New York City heating.
Oh, that's the heating.
Yeah.
That she's like revving up.
Yeah.
Water pressure.
Okay. Work. Both of my parents are from New Orleans. On my mom's side, as far as back as we know, her dad's from New Orleans. Her mom is from Mississippi. On my dad's side, they are all from New Orleans as far back as we know. And so it's sort of like familial, birth to earth, womb to tomb, literally and figuratively. Like, that's where they are buried. Well, the ones who don't exist anymore. It is an interesting place to have grown up, and I don't ever realize it until I leave and sort of like talk to other people about the way that their cities are kind of like structured and built. There is a warmth in New Orleans that I have felt in very few other places. I feel it in Chicago the couple of times that I've gone over there. I feel it in New York City when I'm in like Black neighborhoods around elders. Probably because they are coming from the Black South. And so sometimes. But yeah, it's an interesting experience growing up. I could like talk for hours about it, so I'm gonna like wrap it up.
No, I love it. Have you been to Detroit before?
I have not been to Detroit, but it is one of those cities that when people talk about where I would love to go, Detroit is always like on the list. And I think part of that is because during that like great migration, Chicago, Detroit, Cincinnati, St. Louis, DC, these are all places that people from the Black South, which is sort of like where I'm from, they all left. And so there's still some of these like holdovers of Black Southern cultural sensibility that exists in those spaces. I have not gone to Detroit, but I really want to.
What is the club scene in New Orleans like?
New Orleans is an interesting place because it's like a town more so than like a big city. And so it's still like small town stuff. Um, there are people who I have seen in the clubs who I've known since I was in high school or who know my parents, went to high school with them. Because New Orleans is so small, we get that a lot. But the club scene is warm. We sometimes joke that it's like a circular economy because it's like I have a DJ friend who may throw a party. I'm a DJ. I show up to their party, pay a cover to get in. Next week, I throw a party. They then pay a cover to get into my party, and so it's like the same $10 to $15 kind of like shuffling around. But it is really cute, and I think that New Orleans is finally at a place where we're starting to have a little bit of like a nightlife scene that is for everybody. If you are into techno music, someone's going to be throwing a techno party. Maybe not every weekend, but you may at least get one like once a month. If you're a girl that's into hip hop, and when I say girl, I mean like in the gender neutral sense, even though girl is like a very gender word. But if you're a girl that's into hip hop, there will be a hip hop thing. If you are a girl that's into bounce music, there will be a bounce night that someone is throwing. New Orleans is the South, but it's not Southern. And so we don't really have like country music. So, or at least I don't know about it. So I would not know where to tell anybody to go if they're into country music. I'm like, New Orleans is not the place for that. But if you are into sort of like house music, you can always find someone playing some variation of some sort of a house music party. If you are into trance, someone is going to be playing something like that. Drum and bass, jungle, there's like a mix of everything.
Wow.
New Orleans, however, does party in bars.
So it's not as much like a big club culture?
Correct.
Or?
We do not have we don't have nowadays, well, I'm not quite, but we don't have like spaces devoted solely to clubs in that sense. We don't have a Berghain. We don't have panorama bars. We
Do you feel like it's missing, or it's just kind of part of the vibe?
I think yes and no. There is a thing that that comes along with spaces like that, meaning that you have to sort of like have consistent programming, which requires like a level of work, and it starts to change kind of like what the nightlife structure is doing. But because we're throwing them in bars, there's a little bit more of like a free form. Everything does not hinge on this event happening because like this is a bar. So worst case scenario, the party isn't a success. The bar still can exist as like a functional space. We do have one space that I can think of right now that is dedicated solely to partying and clubbing, and it's like Rabbit Hole.
That's the name of it?
And that is one of the places that is like, I think, dedicated strictly to like that kind of like they only throw like club parties. I party mostly in bars and in hotel lobbies, surprisingly. We're a party city, so you can party anywhere and everywhere.
Have you seen a lot of like people moving into New Orleans? Like, so has it felt like, especially with COVID, I'm sure people are gentrifying. Is it changing at all there, the landscape?
It has I don't want to say slow down because that's like misspeaking, but it has shifted. When I first started partying, when I was like old enough to be in the club, because I was definitely in the club at like 19, which in New Orleans, because they're all bars, you technically should be 21. But I was like 19 and we were like pioneers, quote unquote. When I say pioneers, it's because these neighborhoods had Black people living in them. The hurricane sort of pushed everybody out. A bunch of white kids, typically no shade, from Bushwick, pulled up, took over the space, and they were like recolonizing these spaces that had been left destitute. And whenever we were partying around that time, it was very different. And then those spaces sort of got quote unquote cleaned up and quote unquote like made nice, was seemed to happen overnight. And I think now those footholds are there, the coffee shops, the bakeries, the artisanal whatevers. These places kind of like have their moments, and now they're just kind of like digging their roots deeper into the ground. Again, it's not happening as fast as it did. I don't quite see it changing again as fast as it has, but I think what's happening is that the changes are changes that we don't see anymore. And so that is the thing that is like happening. You have this like food market closing down, and then an even fancier food market pops up. And so it's like, it's still a food market and it's not what it was before gentrification, but it is sort of like shifting the demographics of the neighborhoods.
And the cost of living.
And the cost of living. Yeah, New Orleans is starting to become, for our standards, expensive. People from New York come and they're like, $1,400 for a 2-bedroom, girl, that's nothing. And we're like, bitch, this is actually quite a bit of money.
Yeah. Especially people working remote, like that also adds another layer.
Right.
So back to, I guess, in New Orleans, I was just curious, are these spaces specifically tailored towards like the queer community? And
in New Orleans, everybody is welcome to party everywhere. I think New Orleans is not quite big enough for us to have these like really strong, dedicated spaces only for straight people, only for queer people, only for women. Of course, there are parties where the majority of the people who are there are whatever demographics you have going on, but it is not solely that. One of the bigger parties that I play often and go to a lot is called Give Me a Reason, started by Buffon, who's like my DJ mom. It is a gay and queer party, but because it happens at this bar called Poor Boys, and like Poor Boys is not a 24-hour bar, but it's like open till whenever, everybody eventually shows up to Poor Boys. And so you'll end up with people who are like 19, partying next to people who are 25, partying next to someone who is like 55, and people from like all walks and all different places of life are like partying amongst each other.
It sounds like from what you said before too that it's kind of intergenerational, right?
Right, and
that's what I got from Detroit. Like that's what the vibe was.
Yeah,
really
and that
cool.
we're partying with any and everybody. You're partying next to doctors. Big Frida's been in Give Me Your Reasons before, and it's not foreign for her to. I'm not saying that she's a regular at Give Me a Reason, but it is not foreign for her to pop up at Give Me a Reason, and no one is going to kind of like blow her spot up and like bother her, because it's just like, girl, you partying, you paid the fucking same $10 that I paid to get up in here. So like it levels the playing field, because it's like a dirty little dingy dive bar, which is like home.
Love it. So did you grow up around music? Like what was it like in your household? Did you have family members that played music or DJ'd? Like what was that like growing up?
My parents did not make music, but they played music a lot. My dad is like a tinkerer. I guess they call them makers now. But he was always kind of like cutting some wood or welding a thing or building a thing, or like he calls himself the Black MacGyver because he's like, I can like figure out how to like jerry rig anything. I have no idea if that word is offensive. I feel like it might be, but he can always like jerry rig something to make something work and fit. And whenever he was doing that, he was always playing music. Typically, it was the radio. But my dad would also play CDs he liked and music he liked. My mom was a radio girl as well, but also liked, she would buy records and she would play those. And so I grew up listening mostly to my mom's music because that was the music that I could like connect to. And my mom's music was more like Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, India Arie, Shaka Khan. And so we did a lot of listening to that while my dad was more like easy listening jazz. Like George Benson, Kenny G, Najee, like that was his thing. And as a kid, I was like, bitch, I want to party. What is this like sleepy ass, slow ass music? And then now that I'm older, I'm like listening to some of what he listened to when I was growing up. But I was a kid who, as a queer kid, you're always trying to find like where your tethers to life, community, to people with similar thoughts exist. And I found those in like music blogs and like YouTube recommended once YouTube started becoming a thing. So I was just like trolling Pitchfork before Pitchfork started to kind of like review any and everything. Exhilarator was another one.
Oh my god! XLR.
Yeah. The Fader before it became, and I don't want to call it a mainstream magazine, but when the Fader was like putting up unreleased things that people were making in their basements in Brooklyn, you know what I mean? Trolling, just like random blogs of just like, I was in chat rooms a lot as a kid. Not always with music, but sometimes with music, following people who made music like way back in the day and then just kind of like scrubbing what they were listening to and clicking this link and clicking that link and then following the rabbit hole as far as it could go. And that was sort of like my lane into music.
I love that you mentioned the blogs because I was definitely in that world. I was like making blogs. I had a blog back in the day.
Oh my God, work.
So I love hearing the other side of it and where the journey, the trajectory from you.
Where
from like,
it led.
Yeah, that's so cool. What were some of your influences? I know you talked about your parents' music growing up, but like what was it that you were discovering through your music discovery that you were doing back then? Like, did you have any favorite singers, divas, anything like that?
I have been a fan of Beyonce since she was part of Destiny's Child when it was 4 of them. So like No 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 part. I didn't like No 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 Part 1, so I really came into the No 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 Part 2 remix with Wyclef Jean.
The original one, the Part 1 was slow, right?
Yeah, it was like slow and like more like a like little ballad, and I was like, bitch, I want to party.
Was there a video for that one?
They're like in a club. They're definitely like 16, 17. Now that I'm an adult, I'm like, bitch, y'all were children singing about no, 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 and yes, yes, yes. But it's like a cute song, but that is sort of what I was like dipping into. The first album that I bought with my own money it was Missy Elliott's This Is Not a Test and the Black Eyed Peas Monkey Business. No, Elephant, because that's the one that had Let's Get It Started before they changed it from the R word.
Yeah.
So somewhere I had that original CD with the original song because you cannot, not that I want to hear them say that, but like you cannot find the original one anywhere.
Is it not streaming either?
They completely changed it. Yeah, like I think once they got called out, they were like, let's go ahead and scrub that from all of existence.
That was early on in like call out cancel culture. That was a long time ago.
Stacey Orico was an album that I had.
Oh my god, Dad. That was Christian music, right?
It was, but her first song was Stuck. And when you hear Stuck, it's like a like a pop crossover track, and it doesn't sound like a Christian song. And this is when I was like buying CDs based off of one track, and then I bought it and I played it.
Yeah,
and
that
I
was the
like,
thing.
I
You
was
had to
like,
take a chance to buy. You like that song. You had to buy the whole
the
album.
whole thing, and I was like, this is about God, which I'm like, I'm not mad about, but also I was like, this wasn't quite what I got my mama to buy this for
I'm
me
dead.
for. Most of the time when I bought albums based off of one song, I was like, it came out to be like an okay choice. Cassie's debut was one that I was like, this should have been, I should have never, very disappointed in it. Kelly Clarkson's first album when she won American Idol, called Thankful, was one that I bought.
Breakaway was far better.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on albums that I bought. I think because I just like don't remember them that often. I was mostly burning copies of my older brother's CDs. So he was into Faith Evans, Faithfully.
Ooh. Oh my god, I've actually been listening to that album a lot recently. I'm not even kidding.
So good.
The song, like, there's so many good songs on that.
Burning Up is one of my favorite songs of all times. I think for that bridge
Alone in This World. Oh my god. I Love You. There's so many good songs. I want to hear her out. I want people to like play her music out.
Maybe. We'll see. No, I love it. I always love it like a little remix of a Faith Evans track. But people kind of forget how dynamic her voice is in the discourse of like R&B voices.
Yeah.
But A. Marie's All I Have. Yeah. Tweet, Southern Hummingbird, Aaliyah's self-titled album.
Oh my god, yes.
Those are all albums that my brother was listening to and that I like copied. Beyonce's Dangerously in Love is another one that I was like obsessed with. I was really like R&B.
That was such a good era for R&B. That whole.
I wanted to get into rap music as a kid, but it was just a little too straight. And I was like, girl, I cannot identify with nothing y'all are talking about.
What about Lil' Kim, Foxy?
I loved Lil' Kim. I loved Missy.
My parents understand and speak Spanish, but I would try to push how far I could listen. Like, I'd try to play, like, Lil' Kim, hoping they wouldn't hear, like, all the sexual, like, in cursing, and it would last maybe, like, a song or two.
I used to be scared of the dick.
I know, like, turn this shit off. It's hilarious. Okay, speaking of divas, let's talk about Hancho.
Okay.
Hancho 2023. On the other side in the audience, you were giving so much life. Yeah. We were all just like shaking. Like,
thank you. I was supposed to play Hancho in 2020 and had plans on coming, but then COVID happened. And because I'm a classroom teacher and Hancho happens right around the time of school, I was going to do Hancho 2021. But then that year, everything was like, I feel so bad about this too. Everything was like ready to go. The COVID numbers were looking right. I had gotten, like, we were pushing the start of school back a week. And so it like wasn't happening the first week of school. So it was like perfect timing. And then maybe like 2 weeks before Hancho was starting, maybe 3 weeks, the numbers slowly started ticking up. And I was like, if I go to Hancho, unknowingly catch COVID, and bring it back to the school, I would feel so bad. And so then I was like, I can't do it. Then the next year, which was 2022, they were going to have me come back, but I couldn't swing it because of school again. Then I took a year off from the classroom, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm coming to Hancho. And then I just knew that I was like, this has been a thing in the works for like 3+ years.
Yeah, that built up.
I have to make it worth their while.
You definitely did.
And so I was like, I was talking to Buffon and some of my other friends at home. I was like, y'all, I feel so bad about playing all these tracks I played before. And they were like, girl, most of the people here have not heard you DJ. So they're all new to them. And I was like, oh, bet. And so I was like, I have to pull out all the sort of like banging tracks that I have. The only thing is that I knew where I was starting and I knew what track I was ending on. Everything else was like in real time.
And that's because it was like Third Year Was a Charm, I guess. Were those the same songs that keep steady throughout?
No. There was one that I made. There was one that I made called Nacho Camp Out, like a playlist of tracks that I had my first or second. It was the 2021 Honcho when I was supposed to play, but the numbers ticked up. And I did pull some tracks from that one, but in between 2021 and 2023, I had downloaded a bunch of tracks and then found a bunch that I was like, oh, these are way better. And so I just took 6 or 7 hours of music and like threw them in the playlist and was like, we're just going to start this journey, let the downloads come through, and I'm staying in this box of tracks.
Yeah.
I might have gone out for one, but I stayed in that box of tracks and I knew where I was ending. Other than that, everything was kind of like as it happened.
So you were reacting to like what people were responding to.
Correct. It also just so happens that I think I have a really good taste in music. And so like I can pay attention to the crowd, but I don't always have to, because like when you're the diva, you're the diva.
I mean, it was great. It was like a daytime set. I remember being like at the Creek and then hearing your set, and that was my first time hearing you play and like you getting on my radar. And I just did not. Once I got on the dance floor, I did not leave until the very end.
That's what I hear. The girls were like, I didn't get any drinks. They were like, girl, I had a wig on, but I snatched her off, and I was like, exactly.
No, it was incredible. I mean, I remember like when you really hooked me in is when you played Janet. You had like,
oh my god,
what was the track?
I played Throb, I played All Night, and I played Runaway.
Yes, Runaway. Yeah. I think you started with Runaway and then All Night and then
Yeah. Runaway is one of my favorite. The first time I went to Chicago, I went to a record store and they were going to close in like 45 minutes. I was at Gramophone. I think Michael, I can't remember Michael's last name, but he was just like, I told him what I was looking for. He handed me a stack of records and I was like, bitch, I don't have time to go through and listen to all of these. And so I just was like, this one looks nice. This one looks nice. This one looks nice. This one doesn't. This one doesn't. And then...
So you went by the cover.
I just went by the cover completely. And then, but also like, Runaway is my favorite Janet song and definitely in my top 10 of songs of all time, like the original. And so when I pulled it, I was like, am I going to pay like $30 for a single? And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to pay $30 for a single. Worst case scenario, I paid $30 for one song. And I ended up paying $30 for one song because that was like the one that I liked. And luckily, it is like the one that every time I play it, like it just takes the girls into the stratosphere.
It was so unexpected, yeah. And then you went right from that to All Night Don't Stop from Demita Joe. Like that was, yeah.
Demita Joe is another Janet album that I ripped from my brother because he was into Janet too.
I actually went to a Janet Jackson signing for Demita Joe in Harlem when that came out. So I met her. I didn't get a picture with her, but I have pictures of her. She was gorgeous in person, obviously. Yeah, and then of course the whole Mariah segment of your set. I'm a lamb, like I'm unapologetic lamb. I love Mariah. Like
this may get people to punch me, but I'm not. I don't.
I'm gonna punch you right now.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't always like Mariah's music. I find it to be a little bit too soft. I do think that Mariah does a club mix very well. And so I can get into the club mixes.
What I love about her is that she totally restructures. Yeah. And this is not something that happens anymore. I mean, she's in the Ariana remix.
Right.
Like, whatever. But, yeah, people just send the track off, get a remix, and that's it. But she would go into the studio with a producer and like fully
record new vocals, and I was like, "That's what I need."
I wish we would move back to that kind of.
Bring us back. Get the girls back in the studio.
Right. Exactly. This is a perfect moment for us to take a break, so I can listen to some of your messages.
You've reached the after hours mailbox. I'm probably out at the club or catching up on some sleep.
Are you looking for some uncut fun? Are you looking for a little leche with your cafe? Well, look no further because Mercury and Reggaeton takes place next month, April 19th at Silo at 90 Scott in Bushwick. So make sure you get your tickets because it's the only party that celebrates Mercury in retrograde. For this teteo, we're bringing you UK's hottest DJ and international superstar, Manuka Honey, Bronx native and New York City legend, spinning for over a decade, DJ Sammy Blends, no stranger to the Mercury and Reggaeton family, crowd favorite and bombshell, Dada Cosmic, Dominican Papi and local staple, Newer Portrait, and last but not least, our Puerto Rican king, Lucas Skywalker. So let's wrap up this retrograde season with a bang and crank up the heat to 1,000 degrees. Follow us on Instagram at DL Presents.
Hi, and welcome back to Afters. So you were playing, there was a big build up to that set. What was it like on your side? Because it was your first honcho, right?
Yeah, that was my first honcho and my first festival set.
I mean, it's so like a queer utopia, basically.
Right. The first day that I got there, I rode in on the Queer Fan bus. The first day I got there was when they opened the doors to everybody to kind of like start to pour in. Mm-hmm. And that first day I was like so overwhelmed. I think as I spent so much time with people who I had known from the internet but had never met in person. So it was a lot of like, hey, hellos, how are you? And like filling in that whole gap. And I was like, bitch, I am exhausted. I went to sleep early and was kind of in a mood. Mm-hmm. I think because I was just like really overwhelmed with all of the people and like all of the stuff, and then trying to kind of wrap my mind around like this queer camp. I was not I'm a city girl. I'm not a camping girl. I had never gone camping, so it's also like wrapping my mind around like camping, and then also it's in the middle of August, which is the hottest time of the year in New Orleans. And so leaving to go to like the middle of Pennsylvania and then being freezing cold at night, I was like, girl, what is going on? It is August 18th. This is crazy. I think I went to sleep early again that night. And then I woke up on the day of my set and I was like, okay, I feel like a human being. I'm not a girl that gets nervous before my sets anymore. It's been a minute since I've been like someone who gets like too nervous to play. I think because at this point now I'm like, for the most part, when I put the tracks in here, I know how to do what I need to do. Yeah. And then also a bunch of people from home were there. Buffon was there, Johnny Five was there, my friend Sonali was there, my friend Hannah, my friend Sydney. Mez was there, Marcus was there. Nita, I don't know from home, but I know Nita through like mutual friends. Will was there. Joe Delon was there. The Honcho boys were, so like there was a bunch of people that I had known from home, and then some friends who I had made close friends. But a bunch of these people that I had met through the internet who I'd seen in person for either the first time or the first time in a long time, that I was like, okay, there is like a support network here. All I have to do is not train wreck these tracks.
And you didn't.
And so I was like, exactly. And so I was like, I'm not concerned about whether or not these tracks are gonna hit, because I know that they're gonna. I trust my taste in music, and I know that they're gonna hit. But I was like, dear God, please do not let me train wreck these tracks. At
someone
any time.
knock over the
exactly, but also don't just like let me like trying to like bring a track in and then like miss the timing on this track, or like fuck up the fucking loop or whatever I'm doing. But luckily, like everybody, those living and dead, those here and not, sort of was like, we got it. Because also I was like putting on for New Orleans, because I was like, people don't include us all the time in the kind of like conversations of like national nightlife. We are known for Mardi Gras and just like partying, but not in that sense. And I was like, we doing stuff down there. I'm doing stuff down there. Let me not do that. We are doing stuff down there. Shout out to like Buffon and like Virtue Signal and Quick Weave and Rockaway and Legatron and Kelly. Like these are all people at home who are like doing a thing. And yeah, I had to also just like put on New Orleans gets forgotten about. And so I had to remind them that like we exist.
Yeah.
The South got something to say always.
Mm-hmm. No, I was so glad I saw that set. I was so glad to be there. And just being in the audience, like, you really, like, it was just so beautiful to see, everyone was like in their fun colors and outfits. Like a lot of the New York people I know, we were just going off. Like at the end of your set, I think we were all just like hitting this DJ booth. Like,
that's my favorite. For me, it is important to remind myself and the people that I'm partying with that the whole purpose of partying for me is to have fun. I was like, that was the whole point of like, for me, utopia. Whenever I think of utopia, or I think of like a heaven, whether with a capital H or a lowercase h, whatever, it's supposed to be fun. And so the goal is for me to always just like enjoy it and like share this sense of euphoria. And I think at times that can be missing from the club. It can be so serious and so dark and so heavy that we forget that like, I'm here to have fun. Music should be like, to me, music should be fun. Partying should be fun. It should be silly. And that is a thing that is like really, really, really important to me, because like, despite all of the shit of the world, whether that be wars and genocides and colonization and like all of the isms, and you know what I mean, all of the like terrors of the world. We're all weary of the ways of the world, but despite all of that, we continue to kind of like persist.
Yeah, I mean, the dance floor has always been that escapism. I mean, especially over the past few years for me, I've learned to almost like be transported. And a lot of times it's with people like you playing these sets that just take us on a journey and take us away from all of the shit.
That's that for me is the goal. I left shit in my house going to Honcho, and I was like, I'm gonna forget about all that. I'll just get it when I go back. You know what I mean? Just like I just was like, the goal is to come and like take off all of the shit that you kind of like pick up.
Yeah. I feel like, and it's also like, for something like Honcho, of course, is camping, but I've tried to steer away from being so prepared for stuff. Like, of course, you need your essentials. If you're getting on a flight, you need your passport, but like, you'll figure it out. Like we especially in a space like that, we take care of each other. And
I feel really good and really proud of what I said with that set. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So you talked a little bit about, so you're a DJ obviously, but you mentioned that you're a teacher.
I am.
How does that all play into it? Like, do you compartmentalize these? I'm sure, like, do you think, like, how do your thoughts kind of, how do you get up there and DJ when there's so many other parts of you? Do you bring that to your set? Like,
because I teach high school science, there isn't quite as much of a, and when I say high school science, I mean biology particularly. Because I DJ and I teach biology, they don't quite link up in that way that often. So there is like a separation between the two. I do believe very firmly in the separation of like church and state.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The club is church, the classroom is state. And I believe very firmly in separation of the two. I think they can talk about each other existing. My students know that I am a DJ. They don't know the details of what my DJ life is like.
Do any of them follow you on social media?
They are only allowed to once they graduate. I do not. If I catch any of them following me while I'm teaching them, I block them. And
so you're monitoring your.
Sometimes, every now and then they can kind of like pop in, but a couple of them will go and like an old picture by accident, or they'll go and like follow me back, and I'm like, bitch, I caught you, and now you're blocked.
Amazing.
Talk to me when you graduate, and it like only takes one of them for the rest of them to know, oh, okay, this is like what it's giving. And then people in my DJ world know of my classroom, but I don't really talk much about my kids specifically. I don't put them on the internet. They're more so interested in the fact that they're like, who is this, like, you're kind of cool, but also like kind of weird. You also say that you're a DJ, but you're teaching us science. You're like really funny, but also sometimes a bitch. And so they're like, what is it giving?
Are you strict with them? Or are you
Sometimes. I think
you have to.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think sometimes.
yeah.
I think I would play with them, but they also know that, like, all right, we gotta keep it cute because, like, he'll get wild. And it's just like, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it gets easier the older that I get, because I get older and they luckily stay the same.
Yeah.
I don't have kids who are in my classroom who are like 21, 22.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is sort of like, it is luckily for me, not luckily for me, it is not a thing that I have to interact with that often because I am very intentional about keeping them separate.
Yeah.
I don't want to be best friends with a girl who can't even, like, drive by herself. Like, girl, we can't even party together. Why would I want to be friends with you?
Yeah. That's funny. I guess the cross section of teaching and science and biology would be like Bjork's biophilia.
Exactly.
If you wanted to go there.
And but also the kids, when I play that, they're like, girl, what the fuck is this? This girl is screaming on the track. Get this off.
That is so funny. And I guess regarding your DJ career, how did you learn to DJ? Or like what brought you to the to being a DJ and music in general?
I used to be a club rat, and so I would just pull up in the club and just, like, be in there partying all night long. And then I started being asked to host parties, so then I would, like, invite other people to parties, and, like, that was my thing. And then in being friends with Buffon, I remember he would play parties, and I would, like, walk up to him, like, while he's dancing afterwards. I was like, hey, you should make sure you play this track after that track. And then I think after a while, he was just like, you should start DJing. And I was like, there's a million DJs. So how about you just do what I ask you to do when you just mix these two tracks together. So I was like giving her creative direction.
I love that.
From
so you were like, this would be a good transition.
Exactly. I was that girl. And then she was like, you should start DJing. And I was like, there's a million DJs. And so she was like, be 1,000,001. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, or whatever. And so then I just, like, didn't. And then one day I was like, all right, what controller should I buy? And I think the controller you have on the, like, stool out in the hallway might have been, like, very similar to my first one. And Buffon came over to teach me how to DJ. And then 4 days later, my first mix went up, which is still up on SoundCloud. I think it's called, like, Signage Drip Volume 1 or something like that.
I'm going to have to scroll back to that.
It's, like, 30 minutes because that was, like, as far as my attention span allowed. And then Buffon heard it back and was just like, bitch, not 4 days later. And I was like, absolutely. And then he was just like, he gave me one piece of advice. It's one of the few pieces of advice that any DJ has given me. He was like, I know you see me and Five do it all the time, but he was like, you got to be careful about playing on the filters the whole time. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you lay on the filter a lot. It can turn into a gimmick. And I was like, noted. And then from that point forward, Buffon gave me my first gig maybe like 2 months later. And so I was like, I'm not ready. And he was like, if you never start, you'll never start. She gave me my first gig on January 11th.
Wow.
I can't remember. It might have been 2018, I think. And
you just jumped right in.
From that point forward, that's just what it was giving. I will always sing the praises of Buffon and Johnny Five. Because Johnny Five has also talked to me about music. More so than I think technical stuff. But she talked to me about, like, music and, like, setting the story. But they both bring my name into rooms and speak highly of my skills and talents and allow me to kind of, like, come through and, like, put my own little flag on the field and, like, show my skills and do my thing. Yeah, I know the Honcho boys because they're friends with Johnny Five and Buffon.
Yeah, their sets were really good at Honcho.
Yeah, and so I owe it to them.
Yeah, love
Yeah,
that.
my moms. Oh, I love them so much.
Aw. If you had creative freedom, unlimited budget, what would be like a dream lineup that you would curate, or you could be on a lineup?
Okay.
It could be past, present, alive, not
I'm on the
alive.
lineup.
Yes,
For sure.
of course.
Ooh. I I was going to try and like set the lineup up.
Like
not
the
quite
bigger
there.
text to the smaller text.
Or at least like opening to closers.
Got it.
I would want to be at the peak, but I'm gonna go ahead and like as the baby take a step back. I will open up.
Uh-huh.
Baby girl, who is Buffon and Johnny Five, they would play after me. We would then have Carrie Nation after them.
Sick.
Frankie Knuckles after them.
Ooh. Yes.
And then I would say close it up with either Roach Motel or Fire Island, which are kind of the same like duo. And then probably ended up with like the Loved Up Twins. That would probably be my ideal like 24 hour panorama bar spiral
Love it.
curation situation. That feels right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think ending on Loved Up and then maybe ending on Loved Up.
Have you spent much time like internationally playing other countries? Have you played Berghain?
No, I played Buttons when I went to Berlin in 2022, and that was my first time leaving the country, and then my first time DJing out of the country.
Cool.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was similar to my Honcho set. A little bit slower because I opened up, it wasn't quite as sort of like, I don't want to call that hard, but it wasn't quite as like peak to me.
Yeah.
I know, but for some people, peak is like a harder style of DJing, but for me, I was like, oh, that is like peak time, peak slot clubbing as far as I would like clubbing. Yeah.
In a similar vein, if you could have a dream back to back with anyone, who would that be?
I thought about this for a long time. She may hear this. I know her in real life. My ideal back-to-back would probably be Nita Aviance. I would love to do a back-to-back with her.
That would be sick.
Yeah.
That would really be good.
That would be like, I think if once I got to that point, I'd be like, okay, bitch, I'm actually doing it right with a capital R.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that could happen.
Yeah. It's not outside the realm of possibilities.
Yeah.
So that I'm also saying that in hopes that the universe hears me and we can make it happen.
That's manifesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And last question.
Okay.
Are there any genres that you haven't really explored in your sets?
I am not a techno girl. I would like to be into it maybe, but I think it will mostly be my interpretation of techno, which is still very vocal heavy. I love a vocal.
Vocal?
And so I'm always like, I need somebody screaming and singing on the track. Always. I like a little human element to it.
So do you like partying and dancing to techno, or?
When there's a vocal attached to it.
I mean, you're gonna have to just make it.
When there's a vocal attached to it, I can do it, but after a while it can become really like robotic and computerized. And I think when that happens, I lose track of time. And for some people, they really like that kind of like transcendental experience. And for me, when I lose track of time, it actually like does the opposite. And it makes me a little anxious. And sometimes those vocals or that human touch kind of like put me on the ground and like keep me tethered to the world, which I really enjoy doing. This might sound a little corny. I would love to play like a drum and bass or like a jungle set or like a UK garage situation. But also like I have my lane, and so I just kind of like stick to the lakes and rivers that I'm used to.
Love it. Yeah. So this is only the second episode, but one thing we're doing is we're, with the people that I'm interviewing, giving them a little bit of a challenge. So maybe we can figure...
It may not be a techno thing. It may be completely left field, but I might move into a little ambient situation. I have a visceral reaction against ambient music.
Yeah, I want you outside of your comfort zone.
I think because ambient music is very untethered. It's like a balloon on a string, kind of like at the whim of the wind. And I'm like, no, bitch, pull me, stake me into the ground, please. Yeah. And so I might have to like dip into a little ambient.
Okay, we could figure something out. But I would love to hear, I mean, your set, and you're playing this Sunday. This is gonna be published after the fact. But looking forward to your set on Sunday for Hot For You.
A little disco situation, which I have only played once before.
Oh, it's going to be strictly disco.
Well, it'll be 90% disco.
Yeah. With vocals, surely.
Of course. Always a vocal.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming here. I mean, obviously, like, you're in New York, you're going to explore the city, but, you know, for carving time out for me and this little podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Such a fan of your sets. So, just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to just getting to know you better and partying. And
Me too. I had fun. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Afters is recorded and mastered by Tomas Skelly. Original music by Niccolo Bernardi. Artwork by Cisne. Afters is produced, edited, and directed by myself, Anthony Cuellar, in New York City.